You know, when we watch sports, we see the amazing plays, the last-second wins, and the superstars. But what if I told you that underneath all that action, there's an invisible architecture, a whole set of rules, beliefs, and power structures that shapes everything we see on the field? Well, understanding it all starts with a kind of weird question.
I know. It sounds like the beginning of a bad joke, right? But the answer is actually pretty deep. It reveals this powerful idea that explains how sports don't just happen, they evolve. And sometimes they get completely revolutionized from the inside out. See, each one of those is a battlefield, a place where the unwritten rules of the game are being fought over. So to get a handle on these hidden forces, we've got to talk about something called institutions. Now, I know, that sounds super academic and boring, but just stick with me here. This is basically the secret operating system running in the background of every single sport you love. Okay, so here's the formal definition from researcher W. Richard Scott. It calls institutions the structures that give stability and meaning to social behavior. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? So what does that actually mean when we're talking about, say, football or basketball? Let's think of it like this. Institutions are way more than just the official rulebook. They're the traditions, right? The expected ways players should act, the stories the media tells. It's even our shared understanding of what it means to be a real fan of a team. It's the whole culture of the game. For a really long time, the common thinking was that these institutions were these massive, all-powerful things, and that people were just kind of stuck inside them, like cogs in a machine. But a newer and frankly much more exciting idea has taken over, one that gives the power back to the people in the game. Yeah, they used to call the old view the iron cage. It was this idea that athletes, coaches, even whole leagues were basically trapped by these huge, unchangeable forces. But the modern view, it recognizes something called agency, and that's just a fancy word for the power that individuals have to purposefully push back, to adapt, and to literally rewrite the rules of the game they're playing. And what's so cool here is this term, institutional work. This isn't change that just happens by accident. Oh no. This is the deliberate, strategic effort by people to either create new rules, protect the old ones, or just completely disrupt the way things are done. It's basically a fight for the soul of a sport. And you see this stuff happening everywhere in sports once you start looking for it. Just think about live golf going right at the PGA's long-held traditions. Or remember the early days of MMA when it was fighting tooth and nail just to be seen as a real sport, not just some back alley brawl? Or think about coaches and athletes pushing back on old ideas about gender, or using their massive platforms to call for social justice. That, right there, is all institutional work in action. Okay, so we've seen how this plays out on the grand scale, challenging entire leagues. But this exact same battle happens in a much smaller arena, inside every single team. So how does one person, like a coach, change the institution of their own locker room? This brings us to this really cool idea called identity leadership. You can think of it as a coach's own personal version of institutional work. This isn't just about X's and O's on a whiteboard. It's about intentionally building a deep, powerful sense of us and creating a team that's way more than just a collection of individuals. And researchers have actually broken this down into 4 key parts. First step, prototypicality. That means the coach has to be the team. They have to live and breathe its values. Then there's advancement. They have to go to bat for the team, be its biggest champion. Third is entrepreneurship. This is where they actively create that shared sense of us. And finally, impressorship. That's about creating the rituals, the traditions, the things that make that team identity feel real. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, right? But what's the actual connection? How do these big ideas from a coach actually turn into real, on-the-field team cohesion? That feeling where a group is just totally locked in and united? Well, the answer, according to a really fascinating study on elite athletes, it all comes down to one critical thing: how the team talks to each other. So, researchers looked at 2 specific kinds of communication. The first one is called acceptance. This is all about messages of support, trust, and having each other's backs. The second is distinctiveness. This is the fun stuff like team slang, inside jokes, all the little rituals that make the team feel unique. So which one do you think is the real key to building a cohesive, winning team? To figure this out, they didn't just guess. A study surveyed 441 elite handball and ice hockey players over in Norway. They measured everything: how they saw their coach's identity leadership, their team's communication styles, and of course, how tight-knit they felt as a group. Okay, I know this chart looks a little complicated, but the big takeaway is actually super simple. You see it right here. While the coach's leadership kicked things off, it was acceptance, that supportive, trusting communication, that was the crucial link to team cohesion. The inside jokes and slang were nice, but what really mattered was creating an environment where everyone felt supported. So what this really tells us is that a coach's greatest skill might just be creating a space where players feel safe and truly supported by one another. The leader can set the vision, sure, but it's that constant flow of supportive talk between teammates that builds the kind of bond that wins championships. All right, so we've gone from these huge, league-wide shakeups all the way down to the specific words used in a team huddle. What in the world does this all mean for you, the fan, watching everything from home? Well, it means that sports aren't just games. They're like a perfect little laboratory for seeing how big systems and societies work and change. It means when you see an athlete speak out or a new league challenge the old guard, you are literally watching institutional work happen in real time. And maybe most of all, it means that team chemistry isn't some kind of magic pixie dust. It's built piece by piece through very specific leadership and, crucially, through the way teammates support each other. So the next time you're watching a game, I want you to look past the ball for just a second. Ask yourself, what are the unwritten rules here? What's the real culture of this sport? And the most important question of all, who out there, on the field, on the sidelines, or in the front office, is doing the hard work to change it?